Eliza grew up unseen in the rural South, daughter of a cleaner who passed too soon and a father who preferred to pretend she didn't exist. She was betrayed by her own blood, traded like property to care for a millionaire in a coma. Yet, when she touched his hand and hummed a soft tune, he wept. From that single tear, something unforeseen blossomed. For at times, it is the most wounded spirit that reawakens someone the world had already given up on. It was a Thursday morning. The old gas stove hummed, and the scent of strong coffee struggled to mask the sour tang of stale whiskey clinging to the air. Eliza chopped vegetables with automatic precision, a task she'd performed daily since she was 9. But today, the silence shattered, with a sound incongruous with their poverty. The crisp rustle of dollar bills fanning out across the table. Frank's eyes were fixed on the money. He muttered a figure like a whispered incantation. 800,000. For a girl who doesn't even have a college degree. Eliza slowly turned, the knife still in her hand. On the table, stacks of $50 and $100 bills lay piled. Beside them, a sheaf of documents with a photo, a signature, and her name in bold letters. Frank raised the bottle, a laugh escaping him. "Your big chance has arrived, kid. You're going to look after some rich guy in a coma. You just need to obey." Eliza May learned early to be silent. In her small town, a dusty outpost of forgotten dreams, being a poor woman meant invisibility. Being the daughter of Frank, a bitter ex-security guard, was even worse. Her mother, Sarah, had cleaned houses until exhaustion became illness, and illness dismissal. Eliza was only 9 when she watched her fade away. Since then, she had cared for everything: the house, the small garden patch, the few chickens, and even her father, who barely called her by name. He referred to her as girl, or a burden. She sold homemade pies at the farmer's market, mended worn clothes, and read borrowed books from the public library whenever Mrs. Henderson, the librarian, allowed. She dreamed of becoming a teacher herself, or a librarian, or anything where she would be paid to listen to and tell stories. But now, at 21, her reality was sealed by a contract she never signed. "This is human trafficking, Dad," she said, her voice trembling. Frank took a swig from the bottle, wiped his mouth with his sleeve, and replied without looking, "This is survival, yours and mine." She moved closer to the papers and recognized her photo, taken secretly on some random day, while she watered the garden in an old dress. Exclusive service provision contract, mandatory residency, personal and emotional care. Eliza felt her stomach churn. "This is a sale, Dad. You sold me." He didn't respond. He merely continued counting the money with fingers stained with grease and alcohol. Flashes of her childhood swam in her mind. Her mother singing before bed, the worn notebooks where she practiced her ABCs, Sundays at the community church in borrowed clothes. All of it seemed from another life. In that instant, she knew she had no choice. But she also knew something inside her was shifting. It wasn't just fear. It was something new. It was rage. It was the dawn of courage. And it was there, in that moment, with the sun slanting through the broken window, that everything began to unravel. The sleek black sedan that came for Eliza was so pristine and quiet she feared she'd soiled the leather seats just by sitting. Mr. Davis, the driver, was a gentleman with a soft voice and refined manners. "First time traveling like this?" he inquired, observing her nervousness in the rear-view mirror. Eliza nodded. "First time leaving my hometown." The journey lasted almost 6 hours. The familiar back roads gave way to sprawling highways, and the world seemed to transform with the asphalt. Grand estates, iron gates, manicured gardens that resembled painted canvases, until they spotted the mansion gates, an imposing arch bearing the initials CM. "Carrington Manor," Mr. Davis explained. "The family has owned these lands since before the Civil War." The mansion was immense, white, with towering columns and marble staircases. Eliza had to take a deep breath to keep from trembling. At the door, she was greeted by a slender woman with hair pulled back in a severe, iron-hard bun. "Eleanor Carrington Morris," she stated, extending a gloved hand. "I trust you will live up to the faith we are placing in you." Eliza gave a slight nod. "I'm here to care for Mr. Alexander." As agreed. Eleanor's face remained impassive, but something in her eyes betrayed disdain. Yes, to care, to observe, to stimulate. The constant presence of a young woman awakens stimuli that medicine still cannot explain. The mansion felt like a museum. Antique furniture, portraits with stern faces, absolute silence. "His room is here," Eleanor announced, opening a set of grand double doors. Alexander Carrington Morris lay on a hospital bed surrounded by cutting-edge technology. He was young, handsome, but pale as alabaster. The wires connected to his chest and head made him seem less a patient and more a scientific study. Eliza felt a pang in her chest. She hadn't known what to expect, perhaps an old man or an invalid, but not this. "How long has he been like this?" she asked. 2 years, a tragic car accident. He's alive but unresponsive." That first night, Eliza didn't sleep. She sat beside the bed, observing his silent, rhythmic breathing. What precisely did they expect of her? On the 3rd day, she decided to speak to him. She told him about life in her small town, about her mother, about the peach cobbler she sold at the market. And then, in an inexplicable impulse, she held his hand and softly hummed the lullaby her mother used to sing on her toughest days. That's when she saw it. A tear, slow, salty, solitary, tracing a path from the corner of his eye. She recoiled, startled. "Alexander, did you hear me?" But he didn't move. His breathing remained unchanged. The monitors showed no alteration. Eleanor, upon hearing, shrugged. "A reflex. The body responds to stimuli. It means nothing." But for Eliza, that tear said everything. In the following days, Eliza tried to ignore the tear. She tried to believe it was just that, a reflex. But something within her insisted on screaming. Every time she held his hand, his skin seemed warmer. Each time she read aloud from a book, his heartbeat fluctuated slightly. But no one wanted to listen. No one saw what she saw. The routine was precise, like a sacred ritual. At 7 p.m., Nurse Miller, the morning nurse, ended her shift. From then on, Eliza was alone with Alexander until the next day. In the first week, everything just seemed strange. In the second, it became suffocating. Eleanor passed by the room with unusual frequency. She observed for too long. She asked too many questions. "Have you been sleeping well? Any unusual behavior from the patient? Did he touch you?" Eliza didn't understand her intent until the day she found an anonymous note on her bed. "Don't get attached. The others who came before you weren't so lucky." Her blood ran cold. She questioned Mr. Davis. He hesitated, then spoke in a low voice as if fearing walls had ears. "Maria, the first caregiver." She started to believe Alexander could wake up, became obsessed. "They said she had a nervous breakdown, was admitted to a facility. And the others? They vanished. One left without notice. The other, no one saw her again." The mansion, already cold, now seemed to breathe with watchful eyes. Every step, every sigh, watched. That night, Eliza felt like fleeing. She packed her small bag, looked out the bedroom window, but the rain poured heavily. The road stretched long and dark, and Alexander was there, alone. She approached the bed. "If you can hear me, I need you to listen now. I don't know what they expect of me, but whatever it is, it's not genuine care." She closed her eyes and began to sing. It was an old folk hymn, passed down from mother to daughter for generations. "In the valley low, there's a guiding light that illuminates the soul of those who've suffered too much." Her voice was shaky, but true. And for the first time, Eliza felt she wasn't singing just for him. She was singing for herself. Halfway through the song, her fingers brushed against his, slowly. His skin was warm, warmer than before. And then, again, A tear. Slow. Solitary. Eliza was paralyzed. This isn't a reflex. It's you. It's you trying to come back, isn't it? But she couldn't tell anyone. Nurse Miller would say it was imagination. Eleanor could do worse. In the days that followed, Eliza did something she never thought she would. She pretended. She pretended not to see. She pretended not to feel. She pretended there was no one in that bed fighting to exist. At night, she spoke to him softly. She told him everything she couldn't say aloud. You know, when I was a child, I thought my mother would come back as a cardinal. When I was afraid of the dark, I used to sing this same song. I never had anyone who truly listened to me. Until now, she was trapped, isolated. She couldn't trust anyone. But for the first time in her life, someone was listening to her, even if he didn't say a word. Have you ever had to smile to keep from crying? Have you ever felt like no one in the world heard what you had to say? If that has ever happened to you, leave a yes in the comments. I'm reading every single one. And if you've made it this far, it's because this story is speaking to you too. Alexander's room had slowly become the only place where Eliza could truly be herself. There, she didn't need to lie about her feelings, nor constantly feign strength. There, she spoke, and in some mysterious way, she was heard. That night, she brought a volume of classic American poetry she found on the mansion's library shelf. It was dusty, forgotten. She began to read aloud, her voice low, almost like a shared secret. What remains for me if not your absence, dressed in silence? As she finished the verse, she noticed it again. A slight tremor in Alexander's eyelid, almost imperceptible, but real. She didn't comment. She just kept reading. 2 more poems, then another song. When the clock struck 11 p.m., she approached the bed, held his hand firmly, and said, "If you're in there, Alexander, I won't leave. Even if they want me to go, even if they call me crazy, weak, deluded, I will keep coming here. I will keep talking, singing, reading. For me, for you, for my mother, who also lived invisibly her whole life, and for all the women who left before me." She closed her eyes and rested her head beside his arm. The gentle hum of the medical monitors was soft, almost a lullaby. In that instant, unknowingly, Eliza did something that would change everything. She gave up trying to understand what was happening, and decided to simply remain, not out of obligation, not by contract, but by a silent choice, to believe. She didn't know if it would work, but for the first time, she wanted to try. The next morning, Eliza awoke to the sound of a faint, accelerated beep. The monitors beside Alexander's bed indicated a subtle change in his heart rate. She looked at him. Nothing had changed on his face. But she felt it. She felt it like one smells a scent from the past. A premonition. She told no one. That afternoon, while Nurse Miller performed procedures, Eliza stood in a corner, observing. "He's been more reactive lately," the nurse commented, adjusting the electrodes. "But it's normal. Fluctuations happen. Fluctuations. That's what they called signs of life." The following night, Eliza brought flowers from the mansion garden, white gardenias. She placed them beside the bed and said, "I found out they're your favorites." And for the first time, she saw something that made her hold her breath, a slight movement in the fingers of his right hand. It wasn't a spasm. It was intentional. "Alexander," she touched him again. The pressure was subtle, but it was there. With each passing day, the connection between them seemed to grow like silent roots. She spoke of her childhood, her fears, her dreams. He responded with almost movements, with signs no one else saw. Mr. Davis noticed. During a quick shift change, he whispered, "Keep going, he's coming back. But be careful, who knows about this?" Eliza nodded almost imperceptibly. At night, she made notes in a hidden journal in the nightstand drawer. Tuesday, 10 p.m., subtle smile at the corner of his mouth. Wednesday, 11:10 p.m., slight vibration in eyelids. Thursday, 9 p.m., held my hand for 4 seconds. With each note, hope grew, but so did fear, because the more he reacted, the closer she became, and the closer she became, the harder it would be to let him go. On Monday, Eleanor entered the room without knocking. "How's our sleeping prince doing?" she said with that sweet, poisonous tone. Eliza replied cautiously, "Stable." Eleanor circled the bed, like a predator assessing its prey. "You know, you've been very dedicated, more than the others. Be careful not to get too involved." Eliza froze inside. "Involved how?" "Emotionally," Eleanor replied, smiling like someone testing a caged animal. "We've seen this before." That night, Eliza could barely sing. Her throat was dry, her chest tight. And for the first time in weeks, Alexander didn't react. No movement, no tears. She collapsed into the chair. "Did I invent all of this? Am I becoming like Maria?" The fear was real. And more than that, it was solitary. In the mansion, there was no one with whom to share that anguish. The only one who seemed to believe her, Mr. Davis, was also more reserved. "We have listening devices in some rooms," he whispered quickly in the corridor. "Speak little, feel more." Eliza began to isolate herself even more. She only allowed herself to be herself in the hours she was alone with Alexander. And even then, fear lurked. But amidst the doubt, something persisted. The feeling that she wasn't alone in that room. The feeling that, even immobile, Alexander was still fighting with her. And then, on a silent dawn, as she straightened the sheets, she felt it again, his fingers, slowly closed around hers. That night, the mansion seemed quieter than ever. The thunderstorm that had threatened since late afternoon finally broke, and the windows rattled with the cutting wind. Eliza was already accustomed to the routine, checking signals, adjusting pillows, talking a little, singing softly. But there was something different in the air, a premonition, a tightness in her chest she couldn't explain. "Today, I dreamed of my mother," she said, pulling the chair closer to the bed. "She was sitting on a porch swing, singing the same song I sang to you the first time." She began the melody. "In the valley low, there's a guiding light." With each verse, the rain outside seemed to accompany, as if the whole world was listening along. When she reached the chorus, she held Alexander's hand, and this time, there was no doubt. His fingers moved, deliberately, with intention, with strength. Eliza froze. "Alexander, are you there?" The monitors beeped in sequence, accelerated heart rate, abnormal brain activity. His eyelids trembled, slowly at first, then stronger. Eliza brought her hands to her mouth, her eyes filled with tears, and then he opened his eyes, dark brown, intense, confused for a second, but soon fixed on hers. And that's when the tear fell. One. Perfect. Silent. "Who are you?" he murmured, his voice hoarse from so long unsaid. "My name is Eliza. I've been taking care of you." He blinked slowly, as if testing the world. "Your voice. I remember your voice." "You heard?" "Every night. When you spoke, it was like a thread pulling my soul back." She held his hand tightly, fighting back tears. "I thought I was going crazy." "No, you saved me. You brought me back." For a moment, they said nothing more. They just looked at each other. Two strangers linked by an invisible war, one in the darkness. "Eliza, there's a lot you need to know," he said, trying to sit up, but feeling his body weak. "My accident wasn't an accident, and this house, it's not what it seems." She frowned. "What do you mean?" "I heard voices. When I was still trapped in a coma, I heard Eleanor and another woman talking about keeping everything this way, slowly fading me out, turning me into a disposable burden." Eliza felt the world spin. "And there's more," he continued. "You're not the first caregiver. The others disappeared or were institutionalized." "I know. They told me. I thought it was just paranoia. But now," he squeezed her hand tighter, "I need your help. But we need to pretend. Pretend nothing has changed, that I'm still unconscious, at least until we know who is on our side." Eliza took a deep breath. The rain beat hard against the window, as if the weather too was about to turn. I'll stay. I'll stay with you. But promise me one thing. What? That you'll fight until the end. Not just for you, but for us. Alexander closed his eyes for an instant as if sealing a silent pact. I promise. The next morning, Eliza awoke to the gentle sound of Alexander's breathing. But this time, it wasn't the automatic breath of a machine sustaining a body. It was the sound of someone alive, present, awake. For days, they kept their secret. They pretended in front of cameras, nurses, the smiling stepmother. At night, they spoke softly. They planned. They gathered strength. Eliza was no longer the same girl who arrived at that house. She was no longer Frank's silenced daughter, nor the caregiver hired in exchange for a bag of money. She was now a bridge. She was a root. She was someone who, even unheard by anyone, had managed to touch a soul trapped in silence. Alexander, in turn, was not just a rescued heir. He was a man reborn by something money could never buy: true presence. The lesson Eliza learned is one that perhaps speaks directly to you. You don't need to shout to transform a life. Sometimes all it takes is to remain, because there are people in this world who are trapped within themselves, just waiting for someone to hold their hand and not let go. If this story touched you in some way, if at any point you felt a lump in your throat or thought of someone special, leave a like. That's how I know it's worth continuing to bring stories like this. And now tell me, what city or state are you watching from? I read everything and love to know who's on the other side of the screen. If you believe in the power of true stories, subscribe to the channel. We're just getting started, and I'm counting on you on this journey. Don't leave now. Choose one of the stories on the screen. I'll see you in the next video.